Hi friends, today I am going to create a watercolor piece and we are going to emboss it and do the blackout technique with the embossing folder. I'm using the Distress Reinkers in Saltwater Taffy, Worn Lipstick, and Dried Marigold. I have a 6-well palette here that I'm just going to drop a few drops of the Reinker in of each color. 5. And then I'm going to add water to them to dilute them. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I have some plain water here, that I'm going to drop in with an eyedropper. 12, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, and I have a 6x9 piece of watercolor paper and this is probably a 1-inch flat brush that I'm just going to wet my brush in some clean water that I have in a cup off camera. And oh, I almost forgot, I want to saturate my paper with water. So I'm just spraying some clean water on the paper. And I'm going to brush this all across the paper so I have a good coat of water. And the reason I do that is I like it when the water, or when the color kind of blooms when I add it to the background. Add more water to my brush and then dip it in the color again. There we go. Clean my brush off in the clean water and saturate the bristles again, and we'll go for the saltwater taffy. And I just am blobbing the color with no rhyme or reason around I like to go kind of around the colors that I've already, or the color that I've already put down. Bring more water to my brush, bring it in the color again, just kind of dab it. I don't like to have real harsh edges to the color, so that's the reason for me kind of dabbing it around the other blobs of color that is already down. And off screen, before I bring the brush to the color, I'm dunking it back into the clean water so that helps dilute that color and spread it out a little bit on the paper when I'm dropping it down. And I'm just trying to fill up this entire sheet so I can make 2 cards out of this background. I'll clean my brush off again, add more water to the bristles, and go in for the Worn Lipstick. Oops. And then come around, kind of blotting it around the blossoms that I've already created. More water on the brush, more color. More water, more color. Add a little bit to this yellow. More water, more color. This looks really dark over here. Let's spread this out a little more. these white spots, just trying to get that entire background covered. More water, more color. Just about done with this background. Lighten up this yellow here, is very dark. Break that up a little bit. More water, more color. Let's go on with some of this. Break these up a little bit so okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to come underneath this a little bit, get some of this moisture out from underneath, and I'm going to bring in my heat tool and we're going to dry this panel. So now that my panel is all dry, clean this up a little bit, I am going to run this through my embossing folder. And the embossing folder that I'm going to use is the 3D embossing folder of the month for August 2024 called Floral Expressions. And let's see if we can get a good view of that. It's they look like roses or peonies and small flowers and leaves. And I'm going to run this through my embossing folder and I'll be right back. There are a couple of things that I forgot to mention. First of all, let me zoom this in just a little bit. When you emboss to do the blackout technique, you want the color to be, or it to be debossed on the color side. So what I did is the name and the number of the embossing folder is on the front. Whoops, name, or the Spellbinders name and the product number is on the front of the embossing folder, and that's the way you would normally emboss to get the raised areas facing up. But since we are doing the blackout technique, we want the color to be debossed on the color side, so I flipped it over before I sent it through my embossing machine. The other thing is I have the Spellbinders, I forget what the name of this platform is, Universal Platform I believe it's called. And what I do is it says for a 3D embossing folder sandwich to use the A plate 3D embossing folder and the D adapter plate. But because I'm using watercolor paper and it's 140-pound watercolor paper, the brand name is called, it is from the Bee Paper Company, B-E-E, as in Bumblebee Paper Company. So I use the A platform base, the F shim, the C cutting plate, and two heavyweight paper shims. These are, I believe, 100-pound paper shims. So that's the sandwich that I use when I'm embossing watercolor paper. So let me set all of this aside. And next we are going to cut this down to card front size. I'm going to first trim off the area that was outside of the embossing folder. Let's get this side. Edges. And now I'm going to try to decide which area I like the best. Definitely like this lighter area here, so I want to salvage that portion. So I'm going to cut that to 4 inches so that I can have a 1/8 of an inch border all the way around, and then cut the rest down to 5 1/4, or the other side down to 5 1/4. So that's my first card front. And then I think I'm going to cut off this side here, and then so I want to put it at 4 inches again, and then 5 1/4 again on the opposite side. Now what I'm going to do instead of doing a actual black ink is I'm going to use aged mahogany distress ink, and I'm just going to take that ink pad and I'm going to just drag that, swirl it all around the top, and it's going to bring out that embossed detail by covering the negative space with ink. And I want to make sure this is, you want to make sure your ink pad is very well inked, which I think I do need to give it some more ink because I'm getting lots of kind of sparse coverage. So I think what I'm going to do is pause the recording for a second and I'll be right back. So I have some cream colored card bases, or card fronts. I'm just going to add some glue to my embossed panel, and we'll add those to the card fronts. Turn that sideways so I can kind of line this up. And the ink is still pretty wet on top, so let's see if I got the plastic from the embossing folder. I'll use that to kind of rub the card front, or the embossed panel, onto the card front. Hold that down for a second. And then with I have a foiled sentiment that I just printed from Microsoft Word in a font I like, and I foiled with some deco foil transfer sheets. And we'll add that to the front of the card and call it done. Let's see, make sure that lines up right. That looks good. There we go. Set that aside. Got one more. Let's see. Let's put this side up. That looks good. Add some glue with my Sweet Petunia glue press. Make sure my corners have enough glue to hold that down. There we go. Line this up. Make sure it's even on all sides. Oops. That looks good. I'm going to flip this over, fold it in half. There's ink on the other side. The ink is still wet. Hold that down. Give it a second to grab hold. Use my reverse tweezers to hold onto that sentiment strip. And I think we're going to go right about here. Make sure that's lined up. Use the lines on my glass mat to make sure that's lined up. And there you have it. 2 cards with the Blackout embossing folder technique. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.